made the switch because of urgent environmental concerns. But now I'm also motivated by an awareness of the untold suffering we're causing the creatures who are trapped and killed in the animal agriculture industry. The Council acknowledged that along with moving and greening our investments, our diets are one of the most biggest contributions we can make towards achieving our absolutely essential climate goals. I'd like to thank the deputies, Plant-Based Treaty and Plant-Based Councils for bringing this important topic to the Council. And I've been told that they have contact at all of the councils who have already endorsed the Plant-Based Treaty or are making a switch to a plant-based catering, and they'd be more than happy to share those experiences and learnings. I pass over to the deputies now. Thank you.
Thanks. Hiya, my name is Louisa. I live in Stoke Newington. This is Leah, also from Stoke Newington. Hackney Council. In your climate action plan, you recognise that plant-based eating is the most sustainable food choice. You said you'll prioritise plant-based food where possible. Your goal for 2030 is that healthy plant-based diets are widespread. The Council has a responsibility to champion this change by showing residents that eating plant-based food can be delicious, nutritious, and cost-effective. I grew up in Australia, but my family is largely British. And meat and dairy is huge in both cultures, as it is in many of the cultures that Councillor Caban mentioned last time I was here. I grew up eating meat and dairy for 2 or 3 meals a day. My mother made bolognese, sausages and mash, shepherd's pie, ham and cheese sandwiches, all the usual things. I liked having creamy milk on my cereal and butter on my toast. But there came a point a few years ago where I was ready to acknowledge that I could choose food that was far better for the planet, for animals, and for me. And I could, if I wanted, eat exactly the same types of foods that I was before. I could shop at the same supermarkets, have meals with my family, and celebrate the holidays and the traditions that I always had. I have friends who have come from many different places and backgrounds, and they will tell you the same thing. Made in Hackney, who are here tonight, works with a hugely diverse range of people and community groups, and their food is 100% plant-based. In our borough, there are entirely plant-based restaurants based on Ethiopian, Caribbean, Vietnamese, Uyghur, Latin American, Japanese, Thai, Turkish, Korean, Italian, and Indian cuisine. Plant-based food is the only type of food that can be suitable for everyone, for every dietary need and culture. It is largely halal and kosher and is suitable for those with lactose intolerance, which is the most common food intolerance. You are our elected representatives, and part of your job is to lead and guide and support the changes that will mean we can see a better, brighter, and healthier future. You're here to champion positive and necessary changes, and to help us, the residents of Hackney, to make those changes too. We're asking that you sign the Plant-Based Treaty and switch to 100% plant-based catering for your internal meetings and events. This will cost you nothing, and you can support UK farmers by procuring local, seasonal plant foods for your catering. And by taking these forward-thinking steps, it will inspire residents to eat plant-based foods themselves and demonstrate how serious this issue is. A swift move towards plant-based eating is essential in addressing the climate emergency. And I'll now pass to Leah.
Hi, my name is Leah Phillips, and I'm here as a resident of Hackney and a campaigner for the Plant-Based Treaty. Our food industry is responsible for 1/3 of emissions, and in the UK, with our high meat and dairy consumption, 50% of methane production comes from animal agriculture. We have to cut methane emissions by 45% by 2030, otherwise we will exceed the 1.5-degree limit. Plant-Based Treaty are creating bottom-up pressure for world leaders to negotiate a global treaty that encourages a shift towards healthy plant-based diets. One way to create pressure is for cities to endorse our call for a plant-based treaty and work on local implementation of best practices in plant-based food policy. This commitment could involve creating a local food strategy featuring initiatives such as carbon labeling, plant-based by default options in schools, public education campaigns to reduce meat consumption, and plant-based catering at council meetings and events. We often talk about personal choice, and we should remember that we are always being influenced by our surroundings. This is where public education comes in. Promoting the benefits of climate-friendly foods is important to help people make informed choices. Through education and expansion of plant-based options, it can encourage a shift towards climate-friendly diets across Hackney. At the recent COP28 conference, over 130 countries pledged to integrate food into future climate action plans. The chair of the London Assembly's Climate Committee has called for a plant-based treaty for London. Will Hackney join 30 councils, including Lambeth, Edinburgh, Belfast, Norwich, Exmouth, Haywards Heath, and Didim in Turkey, in endorsing this global plant-based treaty and committing to an action plan? Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for keeping to time. Really appreciate that. Do members wish to ask questions on the deputation? If so, you will have up to 5 minutes to do so. Councillor Penry?
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much for bringing this deputation. And it's very good to hear about authorities who are making great strides in this area, including in Lambeth and Edinburgh. And one of my questions
Madam Speaker, sorry, Madam Speaker, point of order. I think the councillor needs to stand up to address the speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can hear better if you stand up. Thank you, councillor.
Thanks very much. Okay, yeah. I was speaking about the local authorities that already made great strides that you mentioned, and including Edinburgh, who I understand has very much looked at the breadth of things that can be done, and also how we look at culturally appropriate food, how we make that happen to, as you mentioned, for communities who have had quite a meat-based cultural diet or dairy-based diet. And I also understand there's a very good organisation called Made in Hackney, which does a lot of culinary and cooking classes, which also could really help us look at how we make sure that that change in the diet and that offer is culturally appropriate and really inclusive for all our communities. Thanks.
Thank you. Did you want to speak to that? Or Councillor Rathbone, I think you had a question as well. Do you want to ask it and then we can speak to it so we ensure that we keep to time?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Yes, thank you very much for coming. I'm a vegetarian myself. One day I may become a vegan, but I haven't got there yet. So it's a really good presentation, but just one particular question, because I was the person who introduced fair trade into Hackney, and I just wondered, because we have quite strong commitments to fair trade right across our schools and the council and so on, how that fits, because you're talking about plant-based locally and so on. But I just wondered, this is not a trick question, I just wondered how that would fit. And just to let you know that some schools have actually, I'm a school governor, have already introduced some plant-based food for test experimental purposes, because you have to introduce it slowly because people get very worried. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I okay to respond? Yes. Someone from Made in Hackney once said to me, tasting is believing. So yeah, I really love that you're testing it out, and it would be amazing if that could happen in this council chamber as well, you know, at your internal meetings and events. But to answer your question, Made in Hackney, again, to defer to them, speaking with them about where they procure their food from, because they make every effort as well to make sure that it is ethically sourced and local. I mean, I get my vegetables from growing communities. You might know them. Yeah, and I'm sure they would also be happy to speak with you. And yeah.
Thank you. I will now ask Councillor Coburn, Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Environment and Transport, to respond. Councillor Coburn, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and also thank you to both my Stoke Newington residents for coming today. My last day as a Stoke Newington councillor. So sadly, but it's great that Stoke Newington is going out in style like this. Look, I think let me first start by thanking everyone also in the gallery who's also joined us. I know lots of you have been in touch to really advocate for plant-based treaty and for us to go further in Hackney. It's something that we're very passionate about and something that we really do support. We've met countless times also with Councillor Kennedy as well. And a bit like you, my family story into this borough, and one of the things that make us really unique is the diversity of our borough. My parents came here in '95 as asylum seekers from Northern Cyprus. And one of the things that I love most about this borough is, often Councillor Williams refers to Hackney as the world in one borough. And, we've got huge Haredi Jewish community, biggest Haredi Jewish community outside of New York in the Western world. We've got massive Turkish Kurdish and Turkish Cypriot community, huge Black African Caribbean community, massive Vietnamese community. It's a very diverse borough, and that's one of the things that makes our borough really rich. And as part of that, one of our journey as part of our climate action plan is about how we deliver on our climate ambitions. And it's about working with people, and it's about making sure that at every step of the way, we're taking them on that journey with us. Because I always meet people who say to me, Mete, oh, it's great you're telling me you don't do this, don't do that. And by the way, we don't tell people not to do anything. But it's like, I'm one person, I can't change the planet, right? It's, why don't you go take on the big fossil fuel companies? And obviously, that's one way to look at things. And, we all have to do our bit to tackle climate change, because otherwise, if we all think like that, then we're in serious trouble, especially if we're talking about ambitious climate targets for 2030. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we take people on a journey, so we're not shaming them along that journey and pushing them away and making them feel like they're not part of our mission. We want to make sure that they've got that real sense of shared vision and ownership over our climate action in Hackney. And that's why we've been really pushing forward deliberative forms of democratic engagement in this council to make sure that our residents' voices are really reflected in the development of the climate action plan. And most recently, we have the citizens' jury around extreme heat. It's something that I would like to see explored on how we could look at sort of consumption and how we could look at our plant-based treat offer. Because the climate action plan can't just be about what the council is doing. Because even if we achieve the 100%, for example, plant-based street catering in Hackney, right, as a council, we've got still so much to do across the borough. But the one beautiful thing about this borough is and you mentioned this, both of you spoke about this very eloquently, is that we've already got so many community-based organisations that are doing fantastic things in the borough, and I think it's something that we need to be looking forward to. Look, let me cut straight short to the answer of your question, because I don't want to be one of those politicians who just sort of go on and on and on and not really get to the point of what you're asking. 100% we want to get to by 2030. That's where we are. We're already doing lots of things as a council, not just in Hackney, by the way. We lead the Eat Like a Londoner programme on behalf of 27 other London boroughs, where it's a fantastic programme promoting plant-based food and catering. One of the things that we've also been doing is also looking at our AGMs and lots of our internal events. And I believe we're surpassed most of our events now of over 60% of plant-based food. And that will continue to increase year on year. But one of the things about these targets is, as I say to you, going back to the first points that I make, is I want to make sure that we do that incrementally and we take people along that journey. I know that many of my colleagues or many of our guests that come to our AGMs or many of our events really do enjoy the plant-based food. But what we don't want to do is sort of like be very either this or that, and we want to sort of work with people to get there. So one of the things that I'd love to do working with you in the future, particularly in my new role, as Deputy Mayor of London for Environment and Energy, is work with you to think about how we can make sure that we can work with Londoners, but also people in Hackney to help us reach those ambitions. But thanks again for bringing the question and the invitation.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Can members agree to note receipt of the deputation? Thank you. I would like to thank you both for attending, and any follow-up actions will be included in the minutes of this meeting, which will be published on our website. Thank you for another important deputation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. 2030 is far too late. We need it to happen ASAP.